Hi everyone, I'm making this video just to familiarize you with the homework questions. So we'll walk through them one by one, and I'll just give you a brief overview of what the question is asking and what's expected. So for the first part of this question, what we have is that Albert Gator is trying to decide how many copies of a book to purchase at the start of the upcoming selling season. The book retails at $28, so we have a retail price. Then the bookstore is purchasing its books from the publisher, so we have the publisher which sells to the retailer, and then the retailer sells to the end customers. So we have that information that the publisher sells the books to Albert for $20, so that becomes the wholesale price, and which becomes the input for the retailer, and then we have the selling price of 28, right? Then we have some information about what happens to the salvaging or the salvage cost. For the first part of the question, it says Albert will dispose of all the unsold copies of the book at 75% of the retail price. So that means the salvage here would become 0.75 or 0.25 multiplied by 28. Okay, which would be 13. Then Albert estimates that demand for this book during the season is normal with mean and standard deviation. So we have mean of 100 and then standard deviation of 75. Okay, so for this, this is the basic setup of the first part of the question. So then in part A, we would look at how many books should Albert order to maximize his expected profit. So since this looks like a news vendor model, because there's a retailer which has a single shot of ordering some books, which they sell to the end customer, and the customer demand is normal or normally distributed with some mean and some standard deviation. So for the first part, we would just calculate the retailer's problem. So we will find the cost of underage, overage for Albert, right? So our cost of underage would be your price minus the cost, and your overage would be your cost minus the salvage, or G here. So once you have that, then you can find what the Q star would be. Okay, then the second question says that given the order quantity in part A, what is Albert's expected profit? So for this, just go ahead and find the expected profit corresponding to that Q star. Then the third part of the question, part C, is asking the variable cost per book is $7.5, right? So that becomes their input cost. And then given the order quantity in part A, what is the publisher's expected profit? So on each book that the publisher sells, they make a profit of 20 minus 7.5, right? Because 20 is their wholesale price and 7.5 is how much it costs them to produce a book, and then we multiply it with the Q star that we achieved in the first question. So that was the first three parts. Then the question gives you some additional information that the publisher is now thinking of offering the following deal to Albert. It says at the end of the season, the publisher will buy back unsold copies at a predetermined price of $15. So that's the buyback price that we have here. Okay. So we have the buyback price, and then it also says that Albert would have to bear the cost of shipping unsold copies back to the publisher at $1 per copy. So what does the supply chain looks like? So for any of these questions, the first thing that you should always do is draw it out and then write the corresponding economics of the problem. So here we have the publisher and then who's selling to the end customer. So here we have, I'm sorry, this is the retailer, and then it gets the information from the publisher or gets the books from the publisher, and our wholesale price remains the same. The retailer still pays the publisher $20. The publisher still produces each book for $7.5. They still sell it for $28. However, now the salvage, instead of being 25% of the selling price, $13, it now becomes $15. So clearly the retailer is going to make more money in this case, right? So however, would 15 be what the salvage cost is for the retailer? Well, no, 15 will not be the salvage cost because Albert also has to bear this shipping cost, right? So then it becomes, it gets subtracted from the salvage. So for each unsold copy, the retailer or Albert makes $14 in this case. So once we have that information, then the question again becomes straightforward. It's asking how many books should Albert order to maximize his expected profit. So the keywords are maximizing the expected profit, which means that we are talking about the optimal order quantity in the news vendor model. So we would go ahead and find our cost of underage, overage, critical ratio, Q star, okay, for this information, or not for this information, but for the retailer's problem. Okay, so that's what we're going to solve here. And then the demand remains the same, right? Because we do not have any updated demand information. Then part E is asking you, given the order quantity in part D, what is Albert's expected profit? And then this is again, we have enough practice doing this. We just need to find out the expected profit corresponding to that Q star, right? So we will find our Z is equal to Q minus mu upon sigma, and we'll find L of Z, and then expected loss sales, and then expected profit. So you know this. Then part F is asking, assume that the publisher is able on average to earn $6 for each returned book, net the publisher's handling cost. So given the order quantity in part D, what is the publisher's expected profit? Okay, so how much profit is the publisher going to make? So since it's getting the unsold copies back, or it's purchasing all those unsold copies from the retailer, right? Everything that's unsold gets sent back at $15, right? That's how much the publisher pays to the retailer. So how would we find this? So the way that we would find this is, we need to find out what are the various revenues and costs for the publisher. So first of all, the publisher makes money by selling its books. So for each of those Q star, for each of the Q star that it sells, it makes it sells it for $20, and then it costed them 7.5 to make it. Okay, so that's their margin on each of the book that they sold. So about $12.5. After that, we also need to consider what does the publisher do with all of those unsold copies, right? So it purchases all the unsold copies. So the expected leftover that we calculated here, okay, whatever that number is, the expected leftover is what the publisher would be purchasing from the retailer. Right? So we have the publisher, then we have the retailer, then there is some unsold, all of those which are unsold, let's call it QU. All of this QU quantity gets sent back to the publisher. So this QU, we would be multiplying it with how much money. The publisher pays the retailer a buyback of $15, right? So we would multiply it with 15, and now it pays the retailer $15, but it also makes some money salvaging those books, right? And it says that on an average they're able to earn $6 on each of the returned books. So we would subtract it, right? So they pay the retailers $15, but they're able to make $6 on each of those unsold copies because that's their salvage cost. That's the salvage cost for the publisher. So that's how we would be finding the profit in this case. Now the next part of the question says that suppose the publisher continues to charge $20 per book and Albert still incurs a $1 cost to ship each book back to the publisher, and the publisher's variable cost per book is $7.5, then what price should the publisher pay Albert for returned books to maximize the supply chain's profit? Okay, so here the keywords are maximizing the supply chain's profit, which is the sum of the publisher and Albert's profit. So if you recall, what we mean by maximizing the supply chain's profit is that the supply chain is coordinated. Okay, and we know that the optimal buyback price is the buyback price which coordinates the supply chain, or which ensures that together the publisher and the retailer makes the maximum amount of profit that they can. So here we want to find the optimal buyback price. All right. So how would we find it? We have that formula, if you remember, which has things like shipping cost and the retail price, the retailer's price. So this is more of a plug and play kind of a question. All right. So this should be straightforward. Alright, so this video was just about the question 1. I'll make another one for question 2. If you have any questions, please let me know, but I hope that this is clear for you. I have gone step by step with each of the questions and what it's asking, what the information is, and what you need to find out. But again, as you're doing it, if you come across any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.